Hey guys, Michael McJunkin here, and today for this month, I'm going to start reading a Bible story from this Bible story collection. So, let us begin. Today's story, Daniel in the Lion's Den. King Darius was the king of Persia. He had more than 100 officials to help him rule the land. His favorite was Daniel. Daniel was honest, wise, and loyal, and he never made mistakes. All the other men were jealous. King Darius never listens to us, they complained. Daniel will be in charge of the country one day, you'll see. It was true. King Darius had considered giving Daniel control of the whole empire. Daniel's enemies wanted to get rid of him. But how? Daniel never did anything wrong. He wouldn't lose his job that way. They had to think of something else. Now, Daniel was a religious man. He worked hard for the king, but he was never too busy to pray to God. He prayed 3 times a day in his room in the palace. The other officials knew that, and it gave them an idea. One morning they went to see the king. We think there should be a new law. We there think there should be a new law, began one. To make your subjects obey you, said another. They had written the law on a scroll for the king to sign. It said that people were forbidden to ask help from any god or man, except the king, for 30 days. If anyone disobeyed, they would be thrown to the lions. The king read it carefully. So, if you just sign here, said one of the officials rather hurriedly, we will see that everyone obeys it. King Darius signed the new law. He didn't suspect a thing. How could he have guessed that it was a wicked plot to kill Daniel? After Daniel found out that the law was signed, he went to his room to pray as usual. He kneeled by his open window and gave thanks to God. His enemies spied on him as he prayed. Caught in the act, they cried. Aha! And they marched right off to the king to tell him that Daniel prayed 3 times a day. The king was very upset. But everyone, including Daniel, had to obey the law of the land. There was nothing King Darius could do to rescue him. So that evening, the king asked the palace guards to take Daniel down to the lion's den and throw him in. King Darius followed the men down to the den and spoke quietly to Daniel. I wish I could save you, he said. Ask your gold to protect you from the lions and keep you safe. Then the guards pushed Daniel into the den and rolled a big stone across the entrance. The king walked back to the palace very sad. He was sure he would never see Daniel again. Daniel slid down into the den, his heart thudding. He could smell the lions at the bottom of the pit, and they could most certainly smell him. The 2 lions padded out of a cave and looked at Daniel, sprawled on the floor. They were followed by 2 more. The poor beasts were thin and hungry. Daniel crouched there, terrified, as the lions prowled around him and growled. He shut his eyes tight and prayed. Please, God, save me, he whispered. Please, God, save me. He had always trusted God to answer his prayers. No one else could help him now. After a few minutes, Daniel sat up slowly and opened his eyes. The lions opened their jaws and yawned. Daniel could see their long pink tongues and sharp teeth. The lions didn't seem to be hungry anymore. One came and rubbed his face against his leg. Another licked his hand. Then they all settled themselves comfortably around Daniel and began to purr. And before long, those wild, ferocious beasts had curled up like kittens and were fast asleep. Early the next morning, King Darius ran into the den. He had spent all night worrying about Daniel in this dreaded place. Had Daniel's God saved him? As the guards rolled the stone away, the king feared the worst, but he called out, Daniel! Daniel! When Daniel shouted back, the king was astonished. The guards pulled Daniel out of the den. The king was amazed to see that there wasn't a scratch on him. King Darius hugged him happily and took him back to the palace. The king told everyone how God had protected Daniel. He sent messengers all over the world to tell people to worship Daniel's God in the future. As for all the scheming officials, they and their families were thrown into the lion's den and were never seen again. The end. Well, that should do it for today, you guys. See you next time.